She arrived with a cloth-wrapped ukulele and shoes that had more patches than leather. Standing in a neon-lit hallway meant for polished dreams, she asked for something the camera could not capture. Not fame, not pity, only a hot meal and a fair listen. That single, quiet request echoed through a room built on applause and judgment. What followed would strip away rehearsed smiles, expose the small cruelties hidden behind bright sets, and force a city to answer what it owes the people it overlooks. Maya was 12 when the world started framing her as a cautionary picture. Unkempt hair, a jacket too thin for winter, a voice that came from busking corners instead of conservatories. She learned rhythm between passing cars, a cadence born of counting coins and chasing shelter. Music was not an escape, but a covenant. Lessons whispered by an elderly neighbor who taught her to find resonance in the concrete. The opportunity arrived like a two-line notice, an open audition for a televised talent showcase that promised discovery. For months Maya watched the show from gutter-side benches, imagining stepping into the light. When a production assistant spotted her singing into the night and offered a place in the lineup, it felt like a gamble the universe finally let her make. Backstage was a study in contrasts. Bright-smiled parents rehearsed introductions. Contestants wore matching routines and polished shoes. Maya carried a patched case and a folded scrap of music, the only proof she'd been taught to read notes. She noticed the small slights, an assistant steering her away from the catering, an offhand smile that read as an assessment of class rather than talent. She noticed everything and filed it away like a map. The plan she kept closest to her chest was not revenge. It was to sing so purely that even indifference could not ignore the truth in her voice. Lights, instructions, and a clock that ticked loud as a judge's pen. Producers decided the show's arc before the first vocal warm-up. Polished youths, impeccable training, then the human interest spot at the end, a soft-focus human who would make viewers both cry and look away. Maya understood that placement. She also understood that spectacle is a teacher, how people learn to laugh at those who do not fit the model. When she walked into the green room, she registered the choreography of privilege, a world built to make some faces glow and others shrink. An usher moved past, blocking her path to the snack table with a practiced politeness that said more than words. A camera operator muttered about ratings and balance. The director scribbled notes about contrast. Each phrase was a small dismissal dressed as production shorthand. On stage, cameras framed her like a problem to solve. The sound team, under pressure for flawless audio from sponsor seats, fiddled with mics and presets designed for trained microphones and temperamental reverbs. A technician, tasked with ensuring entertaining unpredictability, slipped his own hesitation under technical tweaks, a subtle audio distortion planted to provoke humor and redirect attention. They believed they were safe. They believed the joke would be shared, not questioned. Maya took position under a single spot. She opened the ukulele case as if opening a small secret. The first notes cut through the rehearsed air, not a performance, but an offering. People who had come for talent began to listen. Her voice folded gospel warmth into a technique so clean it embarrassed typical training. The hall that had been bracing for spectacle tilted. Somewhere in the gallery a producer nudged a colleague, expecting the scripted discomfort. Someone in the audience whisper laughed, the sound that often prefaces cruelty. Then, just as the song found its breath, the crafted sabotage began, a static hiss at the edge of the mix, an ugly, recorded chirp meant to make her falter and the audience snicker. It was supposed to be harmless theater. Instead, it produced silence. Not the silence of mockery, but the stunned hush of people who suddenly heard raw talent refusing to be buried. Maya stepped off the microphone and kept singing without amplification. Her voice, honed in wind and tunnel and rain, filled the hall as if the building itself had been waiting for it. Phones went from clumsy amusement to astonished record. Faces that had been ready to smirk now softened. The feed went viral in a way the producers never anticipated, not because of the planned joke, but because the public saw both the sabotage and the refusal to be made small. Clips multiplied. The planted hiss, the technician's gestures, then the unbroken line of Maya's phrase collapsing the ridicule into an uncomfortable mirror. Comments poured in. Fury at the calculated humiliation, awe at the performance, calls for accountability. A social momentum formed not around a single apology, but around witnessing. The network's inbox became a storm overnight. Sponsors demanded explanations. Viewers who had been casual consumers felt implicated. The small act of intentional sabotage had become a public witness of contempt. The director who'd planned it suddenly sat in an executive's office and listened to a chorus of outrage. Not only shameful because it humiliated a child, but shameful because it revealed a systemic readiness to package other people's lives as entertainment. Maya watched the unfolding from a shelter with a chipped mug in her hands, seeing her single performance refracted into thousands of griefs. She did not celebrate. She cataloged implications: the people who had laughed, the policies that allowed the joke, the decision-makers who thought ratings outweighed dignity. A journalist found the elderly neighbor who'd taught her, and the story shifted. The neighbor's modest archive revealed a lineage of music, not celebrity lineage, but a quiet pedagogical chain that had taught generations how to use voice as resistance. That history made the spectacle seem both cruel and shallow. The network's board convened and faced a choice: apologize and change protocols, or bury the footage and pretend nothing happened. In the moment of the network's reckoning, Maya received a letter delivered to the shelter. A short, formal invitation from a foundation created years earlier by a philanthropist who had been a pupil of her neighbor. The letter offered sponsorship for musical education and a modest stipend, not charity, but a bridge. It also asked one very public question: would the network that allowed the humiliation now ensure that access and dignity were restored in practice? The board's official response was televised. Apologies were made, cameras retrained, production rules reworked. The director lost his post. Technicians were reassigned and required to undergo sensitivity training. But the most pivotal reveal was less theatrical. A new program was announced that pledged funded lessons for underserved youth and a public review panel that included community advocates. It was imperfect, bureaucratic, and uneven, yet it opened a different, public conversation about who talent shows were for and who they were allowed to laugh at. Maya accepted the foundation's offer, but kept one condition: she would not become a symbol for pity. She insisted training be given on musical craft and leadership, teaching children both to sing and to own stages. Over the next year, small concerts popped up in community centers, not televised spectacles, but gatherings where skill was the focus and backstories were not turned into entertainment. The director's downfall became a case study. The network rewrote guidelines. Sponsors funded community halls instead of only headline acts. Social media had not erased the structural problem. Ridicule still lived in other rooms. But the viral moment had revealed that audiences can be mobilized not just to consume a story, but to demand better. Maya grew into her platform cautiously. She performed, taught, and insisted on nuance. Her songs remained grounded in the day-to-day of survival rather than triumphant myth. She learned that change is rarely total in a single viral cycle, but that public witnessing can create openings, policy changes, funded classes, and, most importantly, new expectations for how entertainment treats people. When people asked what emerged from that night, she said, not as a triumphant slogan but as a steady conviction, that dignity is learned in small acts and defended by many. The question she left the listener with was simple and sharp. When you see someone reduced to a prop, will you scroll away, or will you step in and listen long enough to learn who they really are?